Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I hope everybody's day is going well. One more day until the weekend. For those who don't know me, I'm Simon Playford. I'm the lead of Playford Lawyers Startup and Emerging Business section and the head of Boltar, which is an exciting venture for CGLaw. And also it's going to probably be a very exciting occasion to speak about a bit later on and kind of demonstrate to you what's happening in the space and the startup space, and hopefully tackling some questions of yours a bit later on. Just with some housekeeping for this seminar or webinar, we do have an ability to take some questions. So if you wanted to, on the right of your screen, there should be a sort of control panel. And if you want to type in your questions there and submit them, they'll flow through to me and we can answer those at the end. In terms of what happens next from here, in terms of an agenda, there's a pretty little photo of myself, not trying to be modest, I'm kidding. With the agenda, we've got 30 minutes, so we'll cover off on a few of these topics. One's just a little bit about Boltar. The second topic today will be the current state of play for startups in this COVID-19 health crisis. The next will be some interesting statistics and facts just to help, I guess, businesses understand a little bit more about startups, so that then would enforce what you can provide to your startup clients, but also if you're looking at that new venture yourselves, the likelihood of your first initial steps to getting the support that you need. The third topic or fourth topic we'll be speaking about is just how startups can navigate through the COVID-19 and what support packages are out there from the government. And then we'll finish off with some cool, fun scenarios and examples. All right, let's jump straight into the shameless plug of a little bit about Boltar. So I guess Boltar is a offshoot of Playford Lawyers. It's their brainchild, and the reason being for that is, I guess Playford has been in business for about 13 years now, and I guess there's been a development over time of, I guess, an analysis of the gaps that aren't there for the support for startup businesses, especially when you've got a short runway and the funds aren't necessarily the tightest or the loosest for the ability to seek legal services. So using a sort of a tech-based approach, we've started this law firm called Boltar, and it's primarily targeted to the solo individuals, the side hustles, the entrepreneurs and corporates, to provide them the support and the advice that they do need at a level of affordability that they won't be reaching to the back pocket to really kind of access the services they need. And to do this, we kind of want to have some fun as well. So partnering with our clients and really offering that 360 degrees support service to them is kind of at the core of what Boltar is. We understand that there's an idea there. We understand that there's a new venture for our clients. So we really want to be able to protect that and watch that grow. So that's a little bit about what Boltar is. And the way that we'll do that is obviously through challenging traditional legal services, through the flexible meeting times, after hours, before work, because primarily startup clients are in their 9-to-5 jobs. So it's important to be able to flex around that. And then you've got value packs. So being able to kind of bulk in as much value as we can for those clients and tackling those common issues, like your terms and conditions, for example, privacy policies. And then you move on to a more quick and easy solution to some straightforward documents, which is your Bolt docs, which are pretty exciting as well. Again, trying to embrace that new, fresh approach to providing legal services. So I'm really excited for that, and we'll be excited to have you guys support that through this period of growth itself, because it really is sort of a startup about a startup. So we'll see how we go. Jumping straight into the content piece for today, if we walk through the current state of play with COVID-19, you do have, if I read my notes correctly, more winners essentially in startup businesses than losers. And the reason being is that the flow-on effects of businesses having to pivot through, if they're looking through different business models, for example, to meet the new demands of consumers, that will have flow-on effects for other services such as marketing and branding and online e-commerce platforms. So when it comes to the current state of play for small business and startups, the question is whether they should batten down the hatches and maybe not explore that idea, or spend some money on research and development and marketing to really kind of jet off into the next phase of the early career of their business journey. The next one we've got, oh, sorry, folks, I've just got a message that my webcam isn't working. Won't be 1 second. See if that works. I can see it. Sorry about that. Yes, back to what I was explaining. When we're looking at whether a startup business should batten down the hatches or spend money, it's more likely the case that, yes, cash flow is a concern for most startups, and always is and always will be. It may just be the case where they could capitalize a lot on what is happening at the moment, and other businesses that are sort of in that panic mode and that don't want to, kind of spend their money to be able to grow their online store or take that next step into supply chain or logistics solutions to everybody working at home, for instance. With more people, I guess, staying at home than ever before, you've kind of got a lot more employees and other business owners thinking about, okay, maybe I should explore outside hustle. Maybe I should do X, Y, and Z. So when they, so from my perspective, you've got really two sort of, I guess, runoff effects of COVID-19 for small startups and small business, and that's existing businesses pivoting their business models to meet new sort of demand from consumers, those working from home, those now going to be more prone to purchases online. You've got increasing e-commerce platforms, online presence and marketing efforts there as well to be able to flow through that traffic onto their website or their online store. Moving on to the second point, you've got new businesses, which again are going to be increased from those home-based side hustles. So you'll see a lot more pop up, whether they're through Shopify stores or whatnot. And those certain businesses and those side hustles will probably be looking at providing products or services that are in high demand at the moment and will be for the foreseen future at the moment. A little bit more about that. We do have some winners and losers, and if we jump to the next slide,
you'll see a uptake in technological assistance tools, whether that's through cloud-based technology, software as a service providers. You also see an increase in tech companies looking towards providing, obviously, your Shopify stores or allowing startups to be able to sell their products online. You'll see existing businesses also pivot and diversify their product offerings online as well. The interesting part about this is the increase in, I guess, education and online consulting businesses. And as I had there, you'll see sort of like productivity solutions that are going to be flowing through to assist those workers whilst at home. So there is a wave of demand happening at the moment for those sectors. Whether that is sustainable long term and upon, once lockdown's over, not too sure. But if the startups demonstrate the long-term benefits of their services in these sectors, then there is a possibility that it would be beneficial. All right. Next. Yep, as I was saying, we'll have an increase in app creations as well. That'll be an interesting offshoot for a lot of businesses, seeing if they can grow their current services into an app-based mobile device based software as a service. And as we see as well, hospitality sector, who are not necessarily the winners out of COVID-19's health crisis and this lockdown, obviously they're a very good example of ways to sort of change their business model to benefit themselves, although not wholeheartedly the most ideal solution, than having people attend their own restaurants and physical spaces. But pivoting to takeaway food and drinks and being able to adapt to the environment. And I think that's a very good point for a lot of startup businesses and small businesses. And any takeaway of this workshop is to remain agile as the lockdown happens, and making sure that you're, I guess, not closing off every door. All right, moving on to the next slide. Quite interesting. It's important to, I guess, when we're thinking about how to remain supportive of startups and small businesses, to kind of understand the facts and the statistics behind where startups come from and the reasons they, I guess, grow their business. And it's quite interesting, the statistics that you'll see on your screen, where you've got Queensland has the second highest concentration of startups in Australia. You've also got Sydney in the first place, which is quite interesting. Obviously, they're quite time poor. They work hard, often in multiple jobs, and they also look for support wherever they can really find it. And primarily, the resources they use is YouTube, which is quite uniquely interesting. And then you move into startups being mainly for business customers rather than to consumers. So you see a drop off in retailers there. I found it really interesting that startups primarily look for support in accounting, graphic design, legal, software development, and marketing in the first sort of steps outside in business. And I think that's an important takeaway for the business that we have online today listening in, just to be aware of the first steps that they would take, the services that they're looking for, and being able to yourselves remain agile enough to help them in a way that they can grow and partner with you into the future. So I think the summary of that is making sure that every opportunity for new business, new ventures, and new ideas can flow from COVID-19, which is a really positive note, I think, from here. On the next slide, we've got some interesting responses from the government in terms of the stimulus packages. They aren't necessarily the winners of any sort of lockdown stimulus provided by the government. The JobKeeper payments are a bit difficult for startup businesses to be able to obtain, partly because if they're early enough, they don't have any sort of prior year to be able to, I guess, compare this year's downturn for. And then you've got the R&D tax incentives. There's a lot of pressure on the government at the moment to really push for that to be to help through the R&D tax incentive to be pushed further. And there's already an extension until September. Ultimately, there are help through banks and lending through that way if there is a short-term liquidity that's quite difficult to manage for small businesses, but obviously there would be a caveat to make sure that you're reading the fine print to that end. Ultimately, as we know, I guess the current landscape and the state of play and the opportunities that are out there for current businesses, but also startups themselves. Some tips for startups, and if you're advising startup clients, is making sure that they're, I guess, revisiting their business plan, revising their budgets and their cash flows, ensuring that they've appropriately forecasted any sort of next 6 months projections, particularly if there is any need for suppliers or need for any sort of overseas imports. Obviously, assess the supplier risk in case if there are further restrictions at play or in the pipeline. And then you've got just being open to new opportunities in, I guess, any sort of product delivery or product offering and service offering as well. Moving on to the fun scenarios and examples. I asked the team to send me through their ideas of what some questions they would presume that startups would ask, and I think they sort of hit the nail on the head here. So if a client's looking for a startup to start up an online business, or I guess add an online sales to their existing business, what are the critical legal issues to consider? And I think the critical legal issues in this question are, and as broad as it is, know your industry, understand your business, the industry that it operates in, the regulations and the licensing requirements, particularly the state government, and also obviously the federal. There is a very useful tool through business.gov.au, which you can have a look at your licensing requirements in your area and in industry. That's a really handy one to start off with. So knowing your industry, sorting your legal structure, making sure that your legal and accounting advisors are on board to really ensure the structure of the business is set up in the way to kind of benefit you and your business, while protecting obviously your personal assets and other things that need to be factored in that respect. So knowing your industry, sorting your legal structure. Then you've got securing your brand, which kind of sort of relates to intellectual property. So you don't want to get, I guess, all the way down the road with your creative branding team to only find out that you can't necessarily secure the domain, the business, the company names, or register those as a trademark. So speak to those that are handling your branding creative team. They're all over it, and they usually will touch base with us, the legal side of things, to be able to I guess protect you in such a way that is through IP Australia, through a trademark application, for example. On that note, there are certain overseas brand hunters that are always on the lookout for these new innovative ideas that unfortunately will, I guess, take your idea from your website and go register it in their jurisdiction, where the IP laws are a bit more looser than Australia's, and that just causes you trouble down the track. So we've got knowing your industry, sorting your legal structure, securing your and protecting your brand. Don't undervalue your T's and C's, so your terms and conditions, setting up your relationship with your clients and your customers, and actually understanding how online contracts, if you are moving on to an online platform, are formed through ClickWrap or browse wrap agreements. This is really, really important. So don't undervalue your terms and conditions. Know what you do and know what you don't. Be careful of, I guess, the consumer watchdogs currently, as they are actively monitoring. I guess price gouging is probably the most important activity to be aware of during this event. You do have your toilet paper hoarders, which are selling them for much higher prices than what market value would be, and these are the sort of situations where Australian consumer law and the Competition Commission will step in and become quite angry. So question 2, a startup, a client is starting a new business. How much should I tell them to budget for legal expenses? Very difficult to answer, I guess, in a typical lawyer speech, but I'll try and narrow it down. And the reason why I guess it's difficult to answer, because it kind of is like, it's always worse than you would imagine or higher than you imagine with any costs really. and particularly starting a business, you've got telephone, internet, business expenses, you've got legal, accounting, business or branding costs, and obtaining the products that you're going to sell. So factoring in all that into a conversation with a lawyer around fees is very, very important. It's always good to be upfront about how much you're willing to spend and how much the value of that service that you're receiving from them is to you. That's a bit of a helpful way that you can approach it. Otherwise, for a small business tackling, say, those legal issues that I mentioned before, legal structure, T's and C's, branding, stuff like that, you probably need around 3,000 to probably 5,000 to be able to tick off those things. Most certainly, formulating a plan of attack to be able to minimize or disseminate that amount of money over time is probably a good way to go. And that, again, that's certainly what I want to achieve with Boltar. And hopefully with the Boltar packs, we'll be able to tick off and minimize expense for those startups. Lastly, before we finish up, if I start a business as a side hustle while still employed in my current job, what are the risks for my new business and inventions? Straight away, side hustlers need to not work on their projects during work hours or use work equipment or knowledge during that project. Typically, employment contracts make provisions for these intellectual property sort of scenarios where they're developed during the course of employment. And during those, and the way those provisions usually work broadly is that any sort of IP developed will vest with the employer. Additionally, side hustlers just have to be very, very cautious of any restraint provisions if the project is similar to your employer's, and conflicts of interest between that 9-to-5 job and that project itself. If it's a new invention or innovation of a process, keep it secret. Don't tell anyone, don't show anybody. That's really, really critical in any sort of patent application down the track. Fourth and finally, straight off-the-shelf legal documents you can buy online without legal guidance, just as good as a lawyer. Look, I'd probably just caution without legal advice. I think online documents, such as what Boltar is launching in its Bolt Docs, I guess are a really great way to keep costs to a minimum for startups and existing businesses as well, which offers some protection. They're useful for those kind of run-of-the-mill transactions or situations, but not really complex scenarios. And that does require that extra little element of legal advice. So you've got, I guess, businesses utilizing these services on the online document services just need to manage their expectations around the document quality. Just make sure that businesses and startups don't expect to, I guess, have a full bells and whistles document as you would have if you, I guess, got a full freight sort of full legal advice around that document as well. So just be very careful in that. Read the product offering before purchasing, do your due diligence, answer the interview questions with accuracy, and read the document once it's prepared and understand it. You'll probably see some AI or artificial intelligence advancement in the future with handling those complexities of legal or even accounting or other transactional kind of works. But for now, it's definitely best to talk to a lawyer if you're in doubt and just really understand the document before you purchase it. Alrighty, I think we are about wrapped up. We do have, thank you for your time. I think ultimately just stay positive, look for opportunities and explore them yourself. If you're a business owner now, look at new ways you can innovate your service delivery or product offering. But also if you're helping other startups or you have startups as a client, just really push them to look for their opportunities during this time. All right, I believe that we have another webinar coming up next week, next Tuesday. That's going to be with Kylie Howe, who is our head of construction practice at CGLaw. It's going to be great. Construction law is a sexy thing, so make sure you tune in and find out all about contracts. And yes, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, everybody. All the webinars are listed on your screen now. If you want to check them out, they're on YouTube. Feel free to go watch them there. A copy of this webinar will be there as well. I'm excited to watch myself not my webcam not working and tech. It's going to be fantastic. And we will speak to you soon. All the best for now, and stay safe and stay positive. Thanks, everybody.